The book of Ecclesiastes tells us that to everything there is a season. Each spring we find ourselves in the midst of awakening and rebirth, a time for sowing seed, for planting, and for experiencing wonder, gratitude, and delight as we witness greenery emerging from unseen roots. Fittingly, in springtime, our calendars mark the occasion of Arbor Day, when we celebrate trees and thankfully acknowledge all that we owe them. Who can deny that we are profoundly in their debt? They provide oxygen, without which we wouldn't be able to thrive or even breathe for that matter. They furnish protection against the elements, giving shade from the heat of the sun, acting as a living break front against punishing winds, countering with their foliage and root systems the erosion and destruction of the very earth under our feet. They beautify the world around us, showering us with color and fragrance. Their fruits and nuts nourish us. Their trunks and branches shelter wildlife, host bird song, and inspire the playful, adventurous nature of children. From trees, we acquire paper for books, wood for fuel, sap for sweeteners, and materials for building homes and the furniture that fills them. Even those unforeseen surprises on the landscape that are called, interestingly, volunteer trees, those that were not intentionally planted, and because they weren't formally invited, aren't necessarily welcomed by everyone and are sometimes considered invasive nuisances. Even they have their charms, often lovingly admired as what are called free plants, emblems of life's insistent will to come into being and reveal itself. In general, from my perspective, the natural world has no lovelier, statelier ambassadors and guardians than the wide array of trees that populate and adorn cityscape and countryside, parks and gardens across the globe. They remind me of poet John Milton's eloquent words, "They also serve who only stand and wait." In some very significant ways, society's beloved volunteers resemble our planet's essential arboreal beings, functioning dependably and devotedly where they appear, just as trees do in nature. Whether occupying center stage in whirlwinds of activity, or quietly making their supportive presence felt in the wings, the participation of sincere, knowledgeable volunteers engenders and disperses a variety of blessings. The British author H.G. Wells wrote that human history becomes more and more a race between education and catastrophe. We express thanks to our volunteers for being so competitive in that race, and for being the enlightened pace setters and civilized front runners that they are. Their benevolence has helped humankind to instill hope, to elevate morale, and to fend off and cope with innumerable calamities and disasters. With grace and dignity, volunteers often show up without having been summoned, without receiving monetary compensation or any material compensation of any sort. They are spurred into action primarily by the inherent virtue of their vigorous efforts to enhance the greater good. These people bring both light and vitality to what for many would be without them bleak, daunting surroundings. They bring liter after liter of metaphorical fresh air to those in need, many of whom have been gasping for compassion and sustenance for far too long. Steadfastly, they offer calm, stalwart roots for others who desperately long to feel grounded, and who, requiring guidance, companionship, encouragement, and cheer, find what they require in the nurturing attention that a host of volunteers routinely and expertly provide. For me, a dedicated volunteer grows into a veritable tree of life for our world. We extend heartfelt thanks to our volunteers for so often embodying the very best of who we are. Their vibrant spirit and the loving kindness of their deeds vividly represent a distinct path to holiness. They give abundantly to those who are ailing and troubled. They bravely and unselfishly hasten to the aid of those who are damaged and vulnerable and in need of kinship and solidarity. And they regularly guide those with whom they cross paths to a place of deep peace and healing. Not only during spring, but year-round, we would do well to remember that every single person is an orchard hiding in a seed. And as the American visionary Henry David Thoreau has written, "Though I do not believe that a plant will spring up where no seed has been, I have great faith in a seed. Convince me that you have a seed there, and I am prepared to expect wonders." How do we begin to align ourselves with a worldview that not only commits to doing no harm, but which also pledges to be of service and use for the greater good? How might we be able to focus on new ventures, fruitful choices, and creative possibilities? How might we rise to the challenge of helping others while at the same time experiencing rejuvenation and health in our own lives? May you and life treat each other kindly.